All right. So let me just see what we have. So as far as I remember, because that was like a month ago, we have completed the conference module, right? So
Yeah, the shared infrastructure with Postgres, EF Core. So pretty much the module has been completed, like 100%. And this is where we finished.
yeah, okay. So that was the typical CRUD style app. So we just have everything within one, let's say, shared layer, which consists of pretty much the main application and the infrastructure itself. Everything was put in here. So we don't want it to waste our energy too much on the CRUD. So eventually, if there will be some, let's say, requirement, or surprisingly this will become a core module, we could rewritten this quite easily with no effort. So let's see the speakers module. So the speakers module, as Peter mentioned, is quite the same story, and this is why we don't want to code this once again live in here. We would like to do something more interesting. So just so you follow what we do have, of course we have some speaker, let's call this entity, which has few properties, as you can see. So we have the email, full name, the bio, and the avatar URL. When it comes to application service, and of course we can see first the contract. So we have the browse async that returns basically all the speakers. Of course we should consider adding some sort of paging, but yeah, this is something that I believe everyone here knows how to add, and we just wanted to, maybe we'll add eventually some paging just to show how this can be done quite easily. We have the get async, that's basically getting by the identifier. We have the create and the update, and yeah, that's pretty much the contract itself. The application service, once again, quite straightforward. And I would say quite similar to what we've seen within the conferences. And yeah, the speakers repository, few operations as you can see, and the implementation, of course, now using the EF Core, since EF Core finally works for us, which is unbelievable after how much we struggle with this. We have the browse async, get async, exist, add, update, everything built on top of EF Core. So this is pretty much all we have in here. Of course, some configurations, which are in this case empty. We have the EF Core settings, the migration, of course, which is quite crucial. So hopefully now when I will run this app, the migration will be applied, and we should see that the database has been created along with this should be okay. This works, and we should see if we go to our database.
Yeah, to Schemas.
Are you kidding me? Data grip. What the? Okay, that was weird. Let me just refresh this. Okay, so we have the modular monolith, and we should see the schemes. All right. So we have the conference scheme. So that was the conference and the host inside. So we have two relations in here. And now we have another one, which is called speakers. So just as you remember, each of our modules has the individual DB context, which will lead us to the situation in which we have different schemas for our modules. So we'd like to keep this separation not only on the code level, but also on the DB level, because this will ease us the situation in which we would like to extract the particular module into the microservice, right? We don't want to have coupled data on the inside our Postgres, because then we'd have to play with some ETL or something else, or extract this data manually. In this case, we have this nice logical separation between our modules. So if you would see, we have the speakers DB context with one DB set, and if we would go to conferences, we have as well in here the conferences DB context with two DB sets in there. So this is how this works for us for for now.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think that we can move further, right?
Yeah. So let's introduce a new module, but we are not really going to implement this module, at least today. But we are going to focus on a, I think, more interesting topic, which will be actually some kind of
Yeah,
integration between the modules.
yeah, and that would be something, something more interesting. So, what we are going to do is what we'll create another. Let's start maybe with the solution folder, and this will be the tickets module, right? Eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's make this tickets, and yeah. So we'll create a new project. Okay. So in here, we'll do something like what was the structure? The modular.
Just the tickets, just the module name here.
Oh, sorry, that's I'm dumb. Sorry. Modular monolith dot, and then we had the modules dot tickets dot API. So that will be the first project, and of course that will be the class the class library in .NET 5. Create, and I will do exactly the same thing
for the core.
For the core, yeah. All right. Create. Let me just delete class 1, and I will of course add the reference from API to our core. So we'll have this reference, and of course our bootstrapper will have the reference to our API for the tickets. So this is this one. We add this one, okay? And I think that we can already register this, just to remember.
Yeah, so let's put there the extension. You can just copy and paste, let's say from the speakers module, the same class.
Don't ask again, dude. Okay. Let me just fix this. And I think that we also need a reference to our shirt. So the abstractions, no, that will be the infrastructure, I believe.
Yeah, the infrastructure. Yep.
Okay, so the tickets module, and let me just do this.
Yeah, and just rename the methods.
Yeah. Okay. So add tickets, and here we'll do use as well. We had already also the extensions, right? So I will just let me just copy paste. I'm not very
make it empty for now.
Yeah, I'm not very proud that we use this pattern that often, but yeah, it works apparently. Okay, so this is it, and
now make a reference from the startup.
Yep. So services add tickets module in here, and here we'll do app use. All right. So far so good. As you probably remember, it was like the tickets module is something that will probably in normal situation will probably not implement at all. It's like that would be probably some external system in which we would simply integrate using the webhooks or some other techniques. But let's just imagine that we have this implemented for some bizarre reason. And we had some sort of integration between this module, right?
Yeah. So let's think about the following scenario. You want to create some sort of, let's say, pool of your tickets when there is a conference created. So you don't want to create maybe, let's say, the pool of tickets before the conference is created. That's like the first thing. And the next thing is that within our conference, as far as I remember, I think we had this property to set the participants limits, right? somewhere in the conference entity. You can check if it's still there.
Yeah. Let me just, sorry, but I was looking at the chat. So what do you want me?
Yeah, just go to the conference entity, and I think there was this
yeah.
property called something like participants limits.
No, we haven't. We skipped this one.
Okay, so we skipped this one.
Yeah. So we can add this one. Yeah, but you can continue the idea.
Yeah. So let's imagine that when we create a conference, we can actually set the limit of the participants to the conference. And of course, this can be, let's say, optional, because you might have an online conference when there is like unlimited number of participants. So this is why this value might be nullable. But if there is a particular value, let's say participants limit is equal to 100, 1000, or whatever the value is, which is greater than 0, then based on this number, we want to actually create the pool of the tickets. Okay.
Yeah.
So from the tickets module perspective, we want to get notified when there is a conference created, and when this conference has this particular participants limit in it. If the participants limit is null, we don't care. Then there is like no need to use tickets at all. I mean, anyone can join a conference.
Yeah.
There is no limit. Or maybe you want to put some sort of tickets, but there will be like no limit anyway. But maybe you have to pay $100 to join a conference. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But if there is a limit, you want to create a pool of the tickets. So whenever there's a new conference created, or maybe there is some sort of conference big updated, we want to somehow be notified about this change. So we want to integrate these two separate modules now in some way.
Yeah. So yeah, today we'll discuss this this topic, in which we'll have basically the integration between those two modules. So basically what we would like to do is we would like to integrate this ticket module with the conferences module in a way in which once some conference will be created, we would like to get the information about this one. And based on this property that I added, so this participants limit, create some pool of the tickets, right?
That's right. That's correct.
Yeah. All right. So the question that remains is what are the possible, I would say, techniques for doing this? Because I think I could think about quite a few, right? So
yeah.
What could
so I think the simplest technique when we talk about the actual integration would be to create some sort of shared package. This is, I think, very common. You create some sort of shared projects, and within this project, you only share your actual messages or GTO, some sort of public contracts. So pretty much just some dummy models that you can exchange between modules. And this is like a typical approach. And then you have your different modules referencing these shared packages exposed by the other modules, and you just have this reference. And then based on these contracts, these messages, the GTOs, you just implement the logic. So at first we'll need to have some sort of shared package shared by different modules with exposed contracts, messages, and GTOs. And then we of course need some sort of mechanism that will be responsible for actually sending these notifications somewhere in memory.
All right. So you would like to create some sort of shared package for the messages.
I'm not sure if this is what I would like to do, but this is like a pretty common stuff, and I think a lot of projects uses this technique.
Yeah.
And I think that's the simplest one.
Yeah, this is basically as I mentioned, this is just the easiest one, and the one that basically does not require any additional, I would say, infrastructure code underneath. So I think that we could start with this and just see how this works and how we might propagate this message from one module to another, and we could then do something more interesting and see what's the alternative and why we would like to maybe introduce it and favor this on top of the other. Let me just go through the chat. Maybe we'll already answer a few questions. So The .NET modules are separated through same facade pattern. I see API there. Is it only way there to access the module? Is it like port adapter but enforced through the framework itself, or is just hard-coded logical enforcement? Only some API is public. Sorry, but JVM pleb here, sorry. Yeah, so the separation in here is just on the, I would say, assembly level. So it's like the structure, if you would see the structure for the modular monolith itself, it's like we need some sort of entry point for our application. So if I would go F4 in here, we could see that this is the ASP.NET core app. So this is the one that will be hosted on top of Kestrel. And yeah, this has the program CS, so the main, and the startup CS with the configure services and configure. So this is the entry app and the project that will bootstrap basically everything, right? So in here we'll set up the whole CI, sorry, not CI, but IOC. So the whole, you know, the whole stuff related to the to our container, and here we'll define the whole pipeline. Not always, I would say, but we just follow this convention which we have this use in here. But normally you would define the whole execution pipeline for the HTTP request in the configure method. So this is the why we call this app bootstrapper. And now the bootstrapper will have the references. Like in here, you can see that this has the reference to each of the individual module. So we have the reference to each API in here. And each of this is put in the separated assembly. So in the Java, it's package or something. I think that's the pack, yep. Something like this. So that will be the separated package. And yeah, the API is just, I would say, the thin layer that contains the MVC controllers only. So this and the tickets API. This is not another ASP.NET Core application. This is just class library, and basically the API itself contains only the controllers for the MVC. So in here you can see that each of them contains the controllers for its own module. So yeah, and then we have the further, I would say, dependencies. So the API has a dependency for the core, and once we'll introduce the clean architecture, that will be quite more complex. But basically the idea is that the API has the reference to the core. In the core we have for now we have everything related to the CRUD, so the application layer, domain layer, and the infrastructure layer combined in one. And the API is just basically responsible for containing the MVC controllers. And if you are curious, yeah, there's no issue for the runtime and for the application part manager to basically crawl through the all assemblies and load the controllers from the different projects into one application. So it's like, even though we have some controllers in this assembly, some controllers in this assembly, and we'll also have the controllers for each individual module, this will be still treated as one ASP.NET Core application, and there is no issue for the platform itself to crawl through these assemblies and load as one. So I would say it's not only the logical level, but we enforce this also on the assembly level, and this is also the reason that we now want to have as much, I would say, quite a few stuff you will see internal. And this is because we would like also to avoid the situation in which the IDE will try to, let's say, give us a incorrect reference, right? So the reference from maybe another module. We would like to keep this separated as much as we can. Okay. Why we call modular monolith by we are using separate API projects? Are you sure that is monolith? Yeah, Okay, that was the question. Okay, I think that was partly answered. Could we have one database for all modules?
So have one, let's say, physical database as a, let's say, instance, but we need to have this logical separation by using schemas or any other way. So yeah, that's like, let's say, one database, but we separate it through the schemas.
Yeah.
So we want to have this separation. Otherwise, the modular monolith, there will be like no data encapsulation. So
yeah, the issue, yeah, because it's like this might be quite odd for you if you see this for the first time. So okay, why I have like one application and I have like different schemas, and we would like, having different schemas is just one, I would say, implication of this of our architectural decision. But it's like this will also introduce some, I would say, data replication, and yeah, but we'll basically have the redundant data because yeah, some maybe we'll have the speakers in the speakers module, so in this schema, but maybe we'll also try to have some sort of local equivalent in the different module, and there will be quite a lot of data that will be basically duplicated. So this is something that we basically need to remember, but the reason that we are doing this is just because just like with the microservices, it's like don't you want to have just one database for your whole distributed system? And this is because you would have a coupling on the data level, and there will be no authority within the particular I would say domain. I would say maybe the domain area, because yeah, if I have an aggregate and my aggregate will evolve, I will add some fields, maybe I will rename, or maybe I will just completely change the shape of my aggregate, and this will be persisted somewhere. So now if I can basically, I don't need to ask my microservice for this data. I can just basically call my database and get this. Now if I will introduce some changes, some breaking changes in my aggregate, and this will probably will lead us to some changes on the database level. We'll have basically the coupling that will go through the entire system, right? And we'll have an issue because now we don't have any authority when it comes to the data consistency and the shape of this data. Basically, everyone can just call the database and get something. So this is why you want to have the proper encapsulation when it comes to distributed systems, right? You want to have an exposed API which will expose some sort of contract, and you just want to make sure that the contract itself will be quite stable. So if I as a microservice will return you some sort of DTO, some read model, however you call this one, you just want to make sure that the contract itself with another services is quite stable, and we don't care whether underneath somewhere inside our domain we introduce some breaking changes. We just exchange the contracts, and this is way easier and allows us to avoid the coupling on the particular services. And this is exactly the same rule applied, but on the monolith level. So now we would also have this authority within particular domain areas, but now on the module level, not the service level. And once we'll introduce the microservices, we'll decide to distribute our system, it will be much easier for us to I would say extract the data from the database and then create this as a separated microservice.
Okay. So I think that's it. Yeah, let's maybe go to the code finally.
Okay. Okay, so we have this participants limit, and yeah, we mentioned some sort of integration with our tickets.
Yeah, and you need to assign this participants limit for the DTO. So you can just copy and paste this to the DTO and assign it in the service level. So it's actually
okay.
properly assigned.
Wait.
Yeah, just put it somewhere there.
Conference. That was the details of the conference. I don't know.
Just conference.
So here.
Yeah.
I don't remember this one. Okay. Conference. Participants limit.
And the other way around.
Yeah. All right. So that was it, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we do have we have our conferences. Oh, by the way, one off topic, okay, before we move forward, because I'm quite sure that it's might be useful for you. So as you remember, we just decided not to use any fancy mapper, and actually in the exact same time I mentioned the automapper, there was someone on chat, why not using automapper? Yeah, so got timing. Yeah, so this whole code was intentional, and we just wanted to keep this stuff simple. And of course, in this case, when you have one-to-one mapping, of course you have the conference and the conference DTO, which is almost identical, and even in those two things we have the anemic entities. We don't have any encapsulation because it's CRUD, and we didn't want to waste our time. So of course this is something that could be quite easily automated and delegated to some sort of library. So of course the most popular is automapper, right? So if you have automapper, you have I don't know, I think that's like 15 years old, but it's still great. And of course you can just create very simple mapping, and for such a simple scenario like in our case, you don't even have to declare any map explicitly. But there is also a very cool thing. It's called Mapster. It was shown to me by a friend of mine. So the Mapster is a library. So it's like 1.4K, so it's quite hot now. The cool thing about the Mapster is that not only this allows you to create this automated mapping, so it's like you install the package and you just do, this is like the extension method on the object. So it's like dto.adapt, and you put the type, or you can pass the you can use either the generic argument, or you can basically put some sort of template, so create new object, and this will fit into the adapt. Sad thing is that it does not work with the anonymous types because it must be mutable, but this works both for classes and for the records. But the cool stuff is that you can even create a DTO automatically. So it's like you have only class, and you basically put some sort of adapt to attribute, and you just say that, okay, I want to generate a DTO from my, let's say, entity, right? And this will generate this DTO with the mapper automatically for you. So pretty cool. And it has quite a few additional features. So it supports the inheritance, some sort of polymorphism stuff, some more advanced mappings, some immutable collections, and so forth. So the Mapster, I think, quite interesting projects. And it's bloody fast, as far as I remember. That it's quite yeah, in here it's like 4 times faster than the automapper. Looks like, at least. Now in here I can see that. Yeah. And some garbage collection, generation 0, allocations and stuff. So if you are using some sort of mappings quite often, I think that's quite interesting projects. Of course, open source on GitHub. All right, so that's it when it comes to mappings. And what? Shall we create some sort of dummy handler for now in here within the core?
Handler of what?
Because now it's like we would like to present the integration between the between
Yep.
the conferences and the tickets, right? So I think that, okay, of course, first thing is like we're missing some sort of information that would come from our conferences module to our tickets module that the conference has been created, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's some sort of message first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe let me just add this first. Let me just go in here. So directory, I will call this events. And let me just add the...
Yeah, and we can use records.
Wait, what? Oh, you mean the instead of the class, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As they are immutable, so they are a perfect match for events.
Have we used the record already somewhere?
You would have to search for solution. Not sure. Think not.
That's kind of weird. I thought we had this one.
You have to do text search, not the type search.
No, but I think that this should also work for this one.
No.
This does not
Just
work?
Just do the text search, I think.
In the writer, wait, what? Well, I was quite sure that that's wait.
Oh, just do the Control Shift F and
Yeah,
text
but
search.
I'm looking for something like that's kind of weird. Not quite sure whether this what? This does not. Okay, I just thought that we had the record. Okay. Let me just add. So, what information do we put in here?
So let's put their conference ID. Just put a few props: conference ID, conference name, the limits of the participants. Yep. Let's leave the free properties for now. So the conference ID, name, and the participants limit.
Okay. So for those of you who don't know. Who doesn't know the record itself, in a very nutshell, with the C#9 we have the new thing. Let me just call this test. So normally, if you wanted to make your message immutable, let's say that you had some value, you could either do this like you probably implemented this like this, right? So have just only a public getter and no setter itself. So now I was able to create some sort of constructor and initialize this value from the constructor, right? That was the only way to create a mutable message. Of course, there was some other crappy stuff like freezing the object. So you could do something like this, and you had very naive implementation that I've seen a few times. So we had a boolean is frozen, something like this, and you allowed to mutate this only if this frozen something like this.
Yeah, that's terrible.
So it's frozen. Then you could throw some exception, right? And if it's not, you basically were doing the value. You had, of course, some private stuff, and that's the kind of crappy way. So basically, the idea was that you had this if, you basically wanted to set the private field, and you also had the method public void freeze. We changed the this boolean from false to true, and that was the way of doing a crappy immutable object, which you had to manually, let's say, freeze, but there was an option to set this by the setters, not by the constructor itself. But of course, that's crappy, and you want to have just the public getter and no setter at all, and this makes sure that your object is truly immutable. However, in C#9, there is new access identifier. So you have something like init. So now I can do get init. So declare this like this. And now this means that I can either set this in the object initializer or in the constructor. And after setting this either in here or in here, you have no option to change this. So you have the this is, I think, quite good, because if you have the contract that has a lot of parameters, I think that the object initializer basically works better. And yeah, this allows you to set this quite nicely, and you have immutable object that has just actually the getters, right? So record is just a shortcut for this one. So you type the public record instead of the class, then the name, and inside, let's say, something that looks like the constructor, you basically put the parameters, but you but in here you have the convention from not from the arguments, function arguments, but from the properties. So it's Pascal case, right? It's not the camel case itself. And this will generate the class with properties with get init underneath. So we'll have immutable object. And one more feature, which is also quite crucial. This will also put the deconstruct method. So feature from C#7 that will allows you to deconstruct the record to particular variables. So just to show you, I could do something like ID, and say name and limit, and do new conference created. And as you can see, I will just not put the arguments in here, but I already have 3 variables of type GUID, string, and nullable int. So now I can use it in my function, and this is GUID. So I have the deconstruction, object deconstruction implemented inside my record. So TLDR, if you're using C#9, just records are the way to go when it comes to immutable objects, and should be, I would say, in most cases default, right? Default approach.
All right. So now the question is, how do we send this message? How do we publish this message?
Yeah. So you mentioned some sort of first shared contract.
Yeah, like a typical approach.
Yeah,
I'm not a big fan of this.
Yeah, so just to so that would be basically what? Some shared package that we would reference directly from one module to another, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you're not the fan of this because?
Because it introduces coupling between modules.
Yeah.
And then you have like multiple modules referencing multiple different shared module projects. And then you start using NuGet for packages publishing, and then you have versioning hell and so on.
Yeah, and this is quite unfortunate, I would say, in this case. Yeah, so we would like to avoid the situation in which we have one module that reference anything from the another, and we spend some time to introduce this quite nice structure, and now we just don't want to give it because we want to integrate those 2 modules. So we would like to have some mechanism that would allows us to have something, I would say, similar to what we have usually in the microservices, right? So the microservices usually don't exchange the shared messages. So we don't have one shared package, let's say NuGet package that contains all the contracts exchange between our microservices. And of course you can do this. It's not like it's impossible or something, but there are a few drawbacks of this approach. So of course you need to remember about keeping this updated. You have just one, I would say, single point of failure when it comes to declaring those contracts. So even though you have the authority and you can work independently as a teams on the particular microservices, you still have just one package to which everyone refers when it comes to contract definitions. And of course, the building process is more painful because now you have to remember about publishing the contracts first, updated contracts, and then you need to update your actual services, right, to the environment. And of course, once you switch to some other technology, maybe some other programming language, it basically doesn't work anymore, right? Because maybe you'll switch to Java and you will not support the NuGet packages at all. So in the distributed system, we would rather have the separated contracts. And so thus we want to have the same behavior within our modular monolith. So we would like to have the local contracts, local copies of our contracts. And this will allows us to adjust the shape of the contracts to each individual module. This will also be way easier for us once we decide to extract the module to the microservice, because we'll have anything shared. So this will be much easier when it comes to this extraction. But the drawback is that we'll need to introduce some additional code just to make it work, right?
Exactly. So should we introduce some sort of abstraction for this sort of communication or integration?
Yeah, you know what? Maybe before we do this, let's just add this representation for the event and just do this local equivalent.
Oh, okay. So
do we have something like this? I don't know. No.
No, you need to put the abstraction there. So yeah, let's do the events directory. There isn't really a lot of this stuff. We have only one directory here.
Yeah, so I will add the interface called iEvent.
Yeah, iEvent.
And that will be basically the marker. So marker interface will be just an empty interface just for the generic constraint purposes. Okay. So that will be it. And I think that we can already add one more interface, which will be the interface applied to class, which will be handling this particular message I got from the another module. And we'll just stick to name handler, right? So iEvent handler, something like this. And this will be generic one. You can add the generic constraint. So this needs to be reference type and implement iEvent. And we'll just add one method, handle async, which will accept as a parameter our tEvent event. And this allows us to add this in here. Okay. So that will be it when it comes to the handler. And now I can go to my core in the tickets module, and I will add the exactly same directory. So events. And in here I will follow this convention in which if we are subscribing, so we are the receivers, consumers of the particular particular message, we are not producers, we'll put this into another directory called external. So this will indicate that this comes to our module, and this is not something that we do produce. All right, so in here I will just add the equivalent, so I can do the copy paste, I guess.
Yeah.
Because now it's local equivalent. All right.
We can make this even internal ones.
Okay.
So we don't get any reference between the modules, both events.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's just make this internal. And yeah, that was someone on chat who was asking about this separation. Yeah, so we also would like to have this being internal, just to have this separation in here. All right, so I will just add another directory, handlers,
Yep.
And let me just add the class called conference created handler. I would just make this internal as well.
Yeah, and actually here we can just log something. We don't have to, save anything, as we don't have any kind of entities on database in this tickets module, just a dummy module for now. So, we can just log some data here, like conference created or whatever.
And I need
And
to implement
we need to add this to the both types.
Yeah.
And the one in the conference module. They have to be IEs.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's jump back to our conference created, and maybe let's just inject here the ilogger of T, and let's just log something like add a conference with ID, just so we can see that something's going on.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and let's just log something there.
Let me just add the string interpolation.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, you have a typo. IID.
What? Oh, IID. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I make a lot of typos, unfortunately. Yeah. Okay. So this is the handler,
Mm-hmm.
and now the question is, yeah, how do we actually transport the information about this create conference, and where do we actually create this message on the conference side, and how we actually transport this from one module to another?
Yeah. So maybe let's add one more abstraction that we can use anyways.
This is
Which
our
should be responsible. Yeah, this will be responsible for actually publishing the events somehow, some way.
okay. So let me just go in here. Okay. So we'll add one more thing. I will call this iEvent dispatcher, and this will be non-generic interface, but with the generic method. And this will be the publish async of the T event.
Yeah, when we talk about the events, we talk about publishing some stuff that has happened in the past.
Yeah.
So we are not talking about sending, just publish. Let someone else know that something has happened. So yeah, let's make the generic constraints as well.
Yeah.
And so maybe let's implement this dispatcher so we can see what is like the easiest way to actually, handle these events in memory. And then we'll try to figure out how we can, do this sort of local contract event translation.
Yeah, okay. Let me just...
Yeah, so now we are just going to the infrastructure layer in the shared project, as we are going to implement this dispatcher. And we can make this, once again, the internal class, as it's going to be just part of the infrastructure layer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a dispatcher.
Mm-hmm.
And
we're going to use the simplest pattern here, which is usually called the anti-pattern, but in some cases it's useful. And we are just going to use some sort of service locator pattern there. Service provider.
Jesus Christ, what the hell is with this service provider? Crap. Wait, sorry. Okay. So this should just work like this. Okay, of course, service provider is the result of building our IOC container. So once we have the service collection in here, once the service collection is built, we get a service provider, and using the service provider, we are able to do the actual resolving of our registered services. So now in here, I can do the following. So since quite a few things are registered as scoped, so we'll create a scope. So we'll do service provider dot create scope, and now we would like to get all the event handlers, right?
Yep.
And
There
call
might
the
be
handle
none, that's
async.
fine. Yeah, there might be 0 event handlers, that's fine. Or any event handlers, doesn't matter.
Yeah. The thing about the event handlers is that we might have from 0 to n subscribers. So it's the way also of decoupling our modules. So the same technique that we would like to use in the distributed system, want to decouple this, and we don't have any sort of explicit bounding between two modules. We just want to decouple them in the matter in which the one module will basically publish some sort of event, right? So event is something that already happened in our system. It's quite significant change in our application. And the publisher is not aware about the number of receivers. So we might have like 0 receivers of this message. So it's a very unattractive message. No one cares about this. Yet still we publish this, and we might have a multiple subscribers that would react to this particular message. So we might have maybe the ticket service that is interested in this conference created message. Maybe also some sort of notification module would be interested. Maybe would send some automated emails and so forth. So in here, I will do var handlers equals and then scope, and then service provider, and then get services.
Yeah, we'll see how we can actually resolve how we can actually register all the event handlers in a moment.
Yeah.
For now, we'll just that we can somehow grab all of them.
And then we do tasks. Since we don't care about the order of this execution, we can basically
we can make it run sort of in parallel. So it might of course be sequential. You can run a for each loop, and this will be just fine if you want to run it sequentially. But usually for the integration events, it doesn't make much sense to run it sequentially. You can run it, let's say, sort of in parallel, which will also speed up the overall execution. So yeah, we're just trying to get all the event handlers, and then call this handle async per each event handler and wait for all the tasks to complete.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right, so maybe let's register this in the IOC, and maybe let's not add this to our generic extensions class. Let's put there some sort of sub extensions class, because once we start adding more classes like this, there will be like it will become a mess. So let's put there the internal extensions, and let us call this something like add events.
Void, or maybe iService
collection. Yep.
Okay, and this, and in here we have iService collection services.
And that's it. That's the only parameter that we need. Okay. So at first we gotta register our dispatcher as a singleton.
Yeah. Yeah, and also that would be cool to have this mechanism for basically crawling through all our application and register our handlers automatically. So we don't have to keep remembering about manual, registering of our handlers. And the sad thing is that we have no option to do such a thing with the default ASP.NET Core container.
Yeah, but we're going to install the extension for the container to make it work.
So another open source project that we used quite a lot, also in a previous course, right? So the microservices .NET, so Scrator GitHub. So this is project Scrator, and the idea is that this adds two capabilities to our default ASP.NET Core container. So one is scanning, which allows us to basically scan the assembly and register automatically some types depending on, of course, what we put in our predicates. And the second thing is the decorator pattern on the IOC level, which is also very cool, and we'll use this at some point. So for now, we just focus on the scanning capability. So let me just get back to shared infrastructure, and I will just add Scrator. So this is this one, 3.3.0. Let me just add this one. And once we have it, I can do the following. So services.scan, and now I just want to put the, maybe let's just follow with the axis just to keep the conventions.
Okay.
And then from assemblies, so of course we need the list of assemblies. So
yeah, we can get it from our app domain.
Yeah. And of course we could narrow this using some sort of, maybe based on name or something, but for now let's just do this way, right? So just get assemblies. We'll pass these assemblies in here. And now,
and most likely, if we do it this way, most likely we'll need to add the reference to our core projects, I guess, from our bootstrapper, but we'll see. Because most likely this will not be able, these get assemblies will not be able to actually resolve our core layers, I guess, but we'll see. I think it might be unable to resolve our core layers without this strong reference, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I think that this should work. I'm not quite sure. Okay, I changed to as because we'll use the narrowed stuff, so it's maybe easier. Okay, so add classes, and now we'd like to say that we'd like to register automatically the classes that are assignable to, and in here I will just put the type of, and I would like to register this type of handler, event handler, right? And this is it. And now I want to say that this is with with
You need to put one more bracket after third bracket. Yeah.
I think that this should work as implemented interfaces.
Yeah, and
with
just
scope
introduce
lifetime.
the proper lifetime. Yep.
Yeah, it's always a mess with these brackets. Okay. So this should basically crawl through all the assemblies within our monolith, look for this handlers. So in our case, that will be just one. So the conference created handler, and register this as iEvent handler of T, when T in our case is conference created event. And this should implement this with the scope lifetime. And that's pretty much
so
it.
just call this extension from our main extensions.
So somewhere in here I will do services dot add events. Yep. Oh, Peter, your favorite question on the chat. Can't we use
Yeah, I've seen this one. I mean, sure. You can use mediator. It doesn't matter. It's just pretty much the easiest code that you can implement to write your own mediator if you want to fully control the stuff. So that's the answer.
Yeah, usually it's like you already want to put something on top of mediator just to have maybe something called slightly different. So yeah, you would like to maybe follow the CQRS stuff, and you want to have this explicitly declared that something is command, something is event, and so forth. I'm not quite sure whether the mediator itself has some sort of extensions that allows you. I know that it has some request handlers and so forth, and usually it's like putting the interfaces on top of this just to have this mediator pattern implemented. And it's like, that was, I would say, no-brainer for us to just create one very simple class that is like 26 long. All right. All right, so we have the dispatcher, and in theory we have the mechanism for automatic registration of our handlers. So now the question that remains is how we are going to call our handler from the conferences module. So it's like, in theory, I should do something like services. So inside in here, I would do something like event dispatcher, right? Of course, this should be private read only. And I would have something like this, and I would do event dispatcher, right? And let's say that we have our, where is the create? Add async. So since the event represents something that already happened, this must be after we commit the changes in our repository. So somewhere in here, I could do await and then event dispatcher, then publish async, and then here I could do new conference created, and in here I could do ID, which would be the conference ID, conference name, and the conference participants limit, right? Mm-hmm. And this should just work.
Yeah, but of course it won't work because these are two different classes, two different types.
Yeah, I mean,
so for the,
we could actually run this, I think, and see what will be the result. Okay, in the meantime, why did you register event dispatcher as singleton?
Because it's just safe to make it a singleton. I mean, it's not using any kind of scoped or transient object, so you can just make it a singleton. It's just using service provider. So it's just safe to use it as a singleton. And a little bit faster, maybe.
All right. Wait, I need to run the code.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking wait. CDC modular. All right. Okay. So, wait, do we have the?
Yeah, for the conferences we do.
Okay, somewhere in here. Okay. So that would be the post, and I will add maybe the.
Yeah, at first you need to add a host.
Yeah, but let me just.
The limit.
Add the limit. Something like this. And okay. Let's send the request. Okay, so 201 created. I think that we need to get this. What the hell? Why can't I just scrap? Okay, so 0 in here, and with this,
you have the variable up. Yeah.
And we do have like maybe let me just put some breakpoints. So in here, in there, and in dispatcher.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Oh, 500. This is what I like. Let me just see. Wait, what?
I added the. You have to add the migration actually.
Oh,
added a new property.
That's crap. Yeah. Wait. So the conferences. Wait. Let me just go to. That was this. Migrations. Delete. And this is cd modules. No, that was the src. Then the modules, conferences, modular monolith core, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was what? The, you know what? I have this.
.NET EF migrations.
But I'm afraid about, you know, this. I don't have the path IntelliSense.
Okay, so EF migrations at,
Yeah.
and then we have the conferences module init as a name.
So, and that was the.
Yeah, and then we have the startup project, which is 3 directories above.
Bootstrapper, modular monolith, bootstrapper, and what was next? The context.
Yeah, the context, which is the conferences DB context. You have the typo.
Yeah. Conferences DB context.
And then we have the -o, which was DAO EF migrations.
No, the migrations is not, I think, explicitly.
Yeah, you have to, yeah.
If you have to.
Just add the, yeah, just put the migrations. I think it's, yeah, it will make a difference. And yeah, let's enter.
Yeah, let's see.
And now run the app.
Yep. Is it better not to use CS proj entry for? Oh crap! I need to drop the database.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, drop, dude. This needs to be updated. It's not being accessed. Come on, dude. Just drop it. What? Seriously?
Try to close the table, or I don't know.
No, it's like, okay, now it works. Is it better not to use CS proj entry for internal visible? So, you know, this one that you can put into the item group in the CS proj. So I believe this refers to this one. I would say that makes, it's pretty much what you prefer. I mean, you know, the thing about the internals visible, this attribute is that you can put this anywhere. So you can even create some dedicated class, and I think that it doesn't even have to be a class, right? It's just some empty CS file in which you basically put this attribute itself alone. And yeah, this way you have this explicit mark that this is visible to some other assembly. With the CS proj, maybe for someone this could not be that obvious, because you need to F4 on this and see the internals. But to me, it's like, it's perfectly fine to have the CS proj if you want to. Okay. So once again, let's create the post. Oh, now it works better. So that's the host ID, and let me just go to post in here. Okay, so now we are after committing the stuff to our Postgres. So we have data inside our integration event, right? And we are going to our dispatcher. We want to resolve the handlers. We have the handlers, and the number of handlers is 0. And
Yeah.
why is that?
Well, because these are two different runtime types.
Yeah.
Even though they have the same name and the same properties, doesn't matter. Two different types from the runtime perspective. So
yeah. So even though we've done with the the copy pasting, so we have the conference created in here. With we have the conference created in here. It's like doesn't matter, right? It's completely different type, and even if you somehow access this and try to call this handle async method, passing the incorrect type would have the runtime error, like the mismatch type invocation, something like this one, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if we wanted to make it work right now, would actually, fast would have to go to the shared projects approach, where we just share the contract from a single module. For example, we'll have this the Modular Monolith modules shared for the conferences, a shared project, and we'll put this conference created there, and we would reference this project from our tickets module. And this would, of course, work because we would only have a single type for this event and a single type for the event handler, referencing the same contract. So this would be like the simplest and the fastest solution. But we want to make it run using this local contract approach. Now, I'm thinking, since it's almost 10 p.m. coming soon, whether maybe we'll just put some abstraction there and then talk deeply about this idea behind how we can make this work in the next episode. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that it's
because it will take probably somewhere about 1 hour to describe it properly and implement it. So maybe maybe let's do it.
Or maybe we can leave it as it is now. I can commit this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we can leave it as this. But maybe let's just change one thing before we finish this. Since we can already see that our event dispatcher is not going to work, but we don't want to change the internals of the event dispatcher because we are going to use it anyway, So maybe let's just put there this new abstraction, some sort of, service bus or message broker that we are going to leave empty, and then in the next episode we'll get back to it and we'll see how we can use this abstraction to actually publish our messages, because we can already see that the event dispatcher will be no good here. We need to do something else.
Yeah, and the issue with the event dispatcher, like in here, is like, if we'll decide to distribute our system and put every module into a separated microservice, it's like we know, or maybe if you don't know that, we just want to say that you probably would like to use some sort of dedicated infrastructure, piece of the infrastructure to have this messaging, right? So, depending on your needs, this might be some service bus, this might be some message broker, but something that will basically wire your microservices and allow you to have this asynchronous integration between your services. So one microservice could publish some message, this will be transported somehow by this message broker to another microservice that subscribed to this particular particular message. So we already can think about this, and we could already see that having this event dispatcher being defined explicitly within our application service will be probably not a good fit. And that's because once we decide to distribute our system, we'll probably use some message broker, so we'll have to change the implementation of our application service, and we'll basically swap this to something else. So we could already think about this and introduce some additional layer of abstraction. And then, in this case, we'll only care about changing the implementation, and the abstraction will remain the same, right? This is the idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's introduce a new abstraction, like a service bus or a message broker, whatever we call it, which and we'll just implement later on. And whether this is going to be in memory, in process, or distributed going through network, this will be responsible for sending these notifications, these messages to different modules or different microservices.
So for now, this probably will sound kind of funny or look kind of funny because we are calling the message broker our dispatcher, but eventually this might actually not be that stupid. So iMessage broker, and I will add some task.
Those single methods, publish async maybe, and with the list or collection of some sort of array of events.
I will add the params. But yeah, since we do have this iMessage broker, the message broker does not have to specifically be tied to the events, right? The integration events that we do exchange between the modules. So I think that we could introduce some more generic thing, something like iMessage.
Okay.
And
yeah, I mean, we could even leave this one as an object, and this will be fine. It's just that, it's just we want to have at least some sort of generic constraint, or maybe we want to extend this interface later on with some timestamps, identifiers, versioning, so we have this very simple type on top of it.
Yeah, and I will do the following. I will just add this to be also a message, right? Because I think this makes sense. Since this is the integration event, this will be some sort of type of our message. And here I will just do iMessage.
Yeah, as a params or a collection.
This could be the enumerable, but I think that the params makes sense here because it would be slightly.
Quite often you publish just a single event, so you don't have to make a collection every time.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just put the dummy implementation of this interface for now, somewhere at the infrastructure level, and then we can call it a day before we move on to this local contract approach.
So I will call this in-memory message broker.
Yeah, let's make this one internal once again.
Yeah. And the name will just explicitly tell that this is not built on top of some sort of RabbitMQ or something else. It's just dummy implementation, as you mentioned. Okay. And of course, in here, we could inject our event dispatcher and call this, right? For now, but
but we can leave it empty because, as you can see, this won't really be helpful as our event dispatcher is not capable of doing this local contract approach when it comes to the event publishing. So we can leave it like this with this not implement exception. Let's just register this somewhere within our infrastructure layer so we can actually inject this, and we will implement this in the next session.
Yeah, I'll do iService collection services.
Okay.
And we do add. For now, I think that this could be even a singleton. I eventually might change this. In-memory message broker. Return services. And let's just add this to our general extensions. So services.add messaging. And this is pretty much it when it comes to the messaging. And as we mentioned, for now it's just the in-memory implementation, but eventually we might somewhere in here we might put the RabbitMQ driver or something else, or maybe you're using some Azure service bus or mass transit, whatever you use.
Yeah,
you could basically change the build different adapters for your messaging, and still within our application services we would use the abstraction. So I will just change this.
Yeah, let's just switch it to message broker.
Yeah.
And just make sure we call this IoT registration for the message broker.
And as you might see, let me just go. Yeah. We'll have exactly the same thing, right? So the message broker publish async, and this is what we would like to have. What do you say? What did you say?
Let's just register in the IOC. Did you call this add messaging in the extensions?
Yeah, but for now I don't know why it's.
I think there's a typo with add messaging name.
What? Wait. Oh yeah, that's not new. All right. So add messaging.
It's fine now.
All right. So let me just add this. So added tickets module. For now, I'll just push it. Yeah, and yeah, that will be pretty much it when it comes to this episode.